Hello, Ivy here. This week's podcast is entitled Fragile Ego and Leadership, episode 75. Introduction. What does it mean when someone is declared to have a fragile ego? How can it be identified, and what are the implications for those around that individual, in the workplace in particular? This podcast explores the science and the impact of having someone with this form of behaviour in the workplace, and more at risk when that individual is in a management position. We will explore both fragile egos and leadership, along with the impact they have on each other, and, as a result, the risks and potential outcomes in the workplace. Signs of a fragile ego. Our ego, or self-esteem, is how worthy we think we are. It's part of our self-concept and self-image, how we view ourselves. A person with a fragile ego has weak and inconsistent self-esteem. Their sense of self-worth is volatile and subject to the whims of life circumstances and others' judgments. Seeking validation from others is natural for humans. Our self-esteem is raised when others think highly of us. External validation builds internal validation. Those with fragile egos, however, are over-reliant on external validation. Somehow, the external validation they receive doesn't consolidate into internal validation. That could make them less reliant on the former. People with fragile egos have an unstable sense of self. They keep changing their opinions and behaviours to gain approval from others, because their self-esteem rests on shaky grounds. They need continual reinforcement in the form of reassurance. Signs to look out for. The over-reliance of people with fragile egos on external validation makes them behave in peculiar ways. If you suspect someone you know has a fragile ego, the signs to look for are these. Defensiveness. We all get defensive from time to time, and usually for good reasons. But a person with a fragile ego gets defensive unnecessarily. They will overreact to the slightest perceived or honest criticism. This happens because criticism shatters their ego. They constantly want to be praised by others, because their self-worth heavily relies on other people. Indecision. A person with a fragile ego lacks confidence. They struggle to make their own decisions. They constantly seek validation for their ideas, opinions, and decisions. If they're on the verge of making what they think is a good decision, they may back out at the last moment because someone wasn't on board with them. Holding grudges. When people are hurt by those close to them, they're likely to get over the hurt quickly. Their ego hardly gets bruised in the process. In contrast, when you hurt someone with a fragile ego, you break the core of who they are. You destroy their whole world, since their well-maintained ego is everything to them. They won't forget your mistakes and will bring them up ages later. Unable to handle failure. People with fragile egos can't handle failure and take it harshly. They feel worthless if they fail because they think failure brings them down in the eyes of others. The last thing they want. Perfectionism. People with fragile egos overcompensate for a weak and inconsistent self by deluding themselves into thinking they're perfect beings. Beneath the mask of inflated self-image and narcissism lies a weak self-identity. Perfectionism feeds into their fear of making mistakes and being seen as unworthy or less than perfect. Does anyone come to mind that you know of? Within your circle, within your family, or, in this case, in the royal family possibly, or within the media, printed or televised? I can think of quite a few. Closed to feedback. A person with a fragile ego is closed to negative feedback. They can't stand it. As a result, they hardly improve. Again, admitting they need improvement would mean they're less than perfect. Their general attitude towards well-meaning advice by others is, yeah, whatever. In the rare event where they listen to negative feedback, they take it personally. They interpret any feedback as a reflection of their self. If you tell them your work was bad, they'll take it to mean you are bad, as opposed to their work. Impressing others. They jump at every opportunity to impress others. They'll take on projects they're unprepared for, or will take charge in a situation where they shouldn't have, just so they can impress others. They'll go to great lengths to impress others so they can keep feeding their hungry ego. The next section of this podcast and in the article, you will see on all of the sections far more than I can and talk about verbally in the podcast, but the details are there, and as usual, lots of reference sources. This section is, can ego destroy one's leadership quality? Research carried out on almost 2,000 leaders suggests that self-confidence is an important factor in effective leadership. However, this is not as straightforward as one might think. Those who are rated as effective leaders by their co-workers have a healthy balance of belief in themselves and their capabilities, but recognise their limitations. They do believe they are capable, are destined to lead others, have good judgment, and often believe they will do great things. This gives them a willingness to take risks, follow their vision, take initiative, set lofty goals, guide the organisation through difficult times, and make tough, critical decisions. Their confidence inspires and reassures their followers. As successful as they are, these leaders are not arrogant. They recognise that they have flaws, shortcomings, and limitations, but they are comfortable with who they are. They acknowledge their weaknesses rather than becoming defensive, and accept the fact that they must work around their shortcomings. They are willing to question themselves, reflect upon their successes and failures, and make an effort to learn and grow in order to be more successful. They will seek out feedback and really listen to input. They are comfortable in their own skin rather than needing to receive recognition. They can laugh at their own mistakes and admit when they are wrong. In other words, their ego is right-sized. In contrast, overconfident leaders frequently have serious problems. They overestimate their ability, performance, and potential for success. They fail to think about what may go wrong. They are unrealistic about their limitations and flaws, and are blind to their potential for making mistakes. They don't recognise the gaps in their knowledge or ability. They have a difficult time asking for help, advice, and feedback. They don't listen to their subordinates or question their own judgment or assumptions. In other words, their ego can be their undoing. So, self-confidence can serve as a positive force, or it can stand in the way of success. It is a difficult balance, delicate balance, I should say. On the one hand, if my central focus is myself, my goals, my achievements, my status, if my whole world revolves around me and my endless quest to get ahead and to prove my worthiness, why would anyone else want to play a part in that movie? Such a hyper-inflated ego is rightly seen as a problem, an inner voice that needs to be minimised or rooted out. This begs the question about the relationship between self-confidence and egotism. Self-confidence is a belief in yourself and your abilities. The ego can be seen as a facade or mask which masquerades for confidence, but is really rooted in insecurity. The ego seeks self-validation, approval, praise, and seeks to be right, and promote an image of invulnerability. This makes it difficult for the person to admit that they are wrong, and causes a leader to focus on self-aggrandizement. The egotistic leader is self-centered, self-righteous, and self-congratulatory. This leads to criticism of others' ideas, actions, and abilities in order to prove one's superiority. Genuine, justified confidence inspires and builds fellowship. Egotism drives followers away. For egotistic leaders, the game is about themselves, protecting their image, winning every argument, feeling entitled, and defending and justifying their decisions. Egotists don't learn from their mistakes, they defend them. They are afraid to be wrong, to show vulnerability, to listen to others' views, and they resent having to do work they consider beneath them. They focus on personal ambition, power, status, and inflating and promoting an image. As T.S. Eliot put it, half the harm that is done in the world is due to people who want to feel important. End of quote. Narcissist. They have a grandiose sense of self-importance, tend to exaggerate their achievements and talents, and expect to be recognised by others as superior, even if their achievements do not warrant it. They are preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, and brilliance. They believe they are special and unique, and can only be understood by other special, high-status individuals. Thus, they require excessive admiration and have a sense of entitlement. They are interpersonally exploitative and tend to take advantage of others to achieve their own ends. They lack empathy and are unable to recognise or identify with the feelings and needs of others. They are often envious of others or believe that others are envious of them. They are arrogant and haughty. Next section. The 4 Ds of narcissism. This is taken from one of the reference sources listed at the end of the article, and it is from the Gill Law Group. I have made a point of not mentioning any names of which members of the British royal family fit these descriptions, but needless to say, it is more than one person, and I personally consider them high risk to be playing at being diplomat and liaising with a number of people acting as representatives of the UK. There has been questions asked about that side of things for decades, but here we are, still pretending there is a purpose for the country in there somewhere. These subheadings supply enough theory in terms of much practice in real life over the decades. I will leave the readers and listeners to make up their own minds of which headings apply to which members. The first D. Deny. People with NPD often deny pretty much anything that could put them in a negative light. This often comes up in marital arguments when the narcissist goes too far. They say something cruel and uncalled for, and then deny that they ever said that thing, even though their spouse heard it loud and clear. Dismiss. If a narcissist can't outright deny something, then they will just dismiss it, which is like the cousin of denial. Did your NPD spouse spend too much money on sports paraphernalia last week? And now you're worried about making that car payment? According to them, you're making a mountain out of a molehill, even if you have financial records showing you're running the risk of going into the red. Devalue. When faced with someone with too much self-confidence, a narcissist gets scared because they secretly don't have any for themselves. In this situation, they will try to devalue their spouse as much as possible. A narcissist will talk down to their spouse to make them doubt themselves and feel less valuable to the relationship. One tactic that they use to do this is to create a new narrative to a situation or argument that allows them to frame it in a way that makes them seem like they're in the right. Divorce. To get away from a spouse with NPD, the only option is often to divorce them. People who want to divorce a narcissist should not feel guilty, no matter how much their narcissist spouse would love it if they felt guilty every moment of their life. Narcissism inflicts emotional abuse, sometimes unintentionally. No one deserves to live with abuse every day. Protect yourself and your family by filing for divorce if it seems like the right way forward. The Crown brilliantly portrays the decline of the British monarchy, Season 4. It would be wrong of me to attempt to comment on any series of The Crown, as I have never watched not even a second. I have zero interest in the UK royal family and never did at any time in my life. My interest began with Diana, and then only with her two sons, watching as they grew into adults, and then my interest was on Harry only, and has not changed. I already had enormous affection and interest for Meghan, way before she met Harry. The two of them combined piqued my interest to new proportions, and I was horrified to see the nightmare unfold. My interest and affection followed them when they left the UK. That being said, because of my background and professional qualifications alongside academia beforehand, I had no interest in the daily nonsense put out as news. I was never distracted by that, and vehemently avoided giving any of the literary liners, known as tabloids, any clickbait income from me. My interest always homed in on what was going on behind the fancy curtains, metaphorically speaking. I looked at and explored who would benefit from such news being paraded about each day, with the usual experts on the payroll spouting the same topics and the same keywords and phrases. If one stands back and looks for key moments over time, a pattern of information always emerges, and none of it, of any substance, ever appears in the daily onslaught of so-called news. That being said, in my research for this podcast, I came across a number of websites which were applicable to this podcast, and one of them I thought the following paragraph was worthy of a mention, not least because it mirrors my views on the UK monarchy and all remaining monarchy constructs around the world. There is no need for a monarchy in any modern society, so despite not ever watching any series of The Crown, and I believe we are past series 4 now, not sure about that, but I do believe a new series has begun. I don't know what number, but I think a new one has begun. Well, I know a new one has begun, but I haven't watched any of it. I do not know the number of the current one. However, this paragraph completely gives my views on the structure and its existence in UK society. The full article is listed in the reference sources. The Crown is a brilliant exemplification of the outdated monarchy's inevitable decline. One of the key themes in the series is the monarchy's struggle to stay relevant in our changing society, a theme that is extremely prevalent in the real world. Portrayed by seasoned actors and adorned with stunning sets, the show portrays just how out of place the royal family is in a post-colonial world. End of quote. Final thoughts. Very few people emerge into the world and are born gifted way beyond their years. None of them, as far as science supports, states that anyone is born with a set of competencies to lead people and to possess a wide range of business skills and acumen, alongside years of experience building up a set of skills which enables them to work with telephone number taxpayer funds and to ensure that the country is being managed well. I would add that I do not believe that we have too many elected officials who possess such skills either, but I am certain that they possess much, much more than any member of any royal family. It is all about power, not competence. Anyone who dares to question their approach is dealt with in no uncertain terms. I am not alone when I see how the UK royal family treat people who have independent thoughts and who possess skills that people higher up in the stepladder of bow and scraping levels do not have, and know that they do not need to have, before they have their ego stroked and given their favourite toy to play with, or given their favourite meal, and so on, and so on. Pacify to keep the peace, by whatever means or object. They are man-babies. Increasing numbers of the UK and the global population know what they see, and no amount of dollar store royal PR is going to change that. As I have stated, more and more of us have stopped reading newspapers, and their drop in income is well deserved. You will see in the reference sources a link to an article about whether the world of media, including TV, attracts narcissists. There is a very large pool of hate-inciting individuals who are paraded on TV most days with rhetoric which could lead to, and has done on more than one occasion, serious mental health issues in their targets, and in at least one case in recent years, loss of life. I can only speak about UK media, and there is definitely a link. I am too far gone in age to take on that research now, not least because I have much on the go at the moment, and they are being written for future history books. Rewriting of history can continue in the same forums it has always done, but that is so well known about now, it loses credibility by the day. Other sources are taking up the mantle now, and the truth will emerge. So whilst I have not stated anything in detail here, my thoughts are that I do think there is a link, and there is an unhealthy amount of people employed in UK media, written and televised, that is adding to the toxins that are taking the UK into the sewers. We have elected officials happily taking the country on the journey to the sewer called oblivion, and it is travelling there in its leaky boat with no captain and leaking in increasing numbers of places, waving to ships in solid condition, travelling the other way. I suspect that there will be a lot of fragile egos and failed leaders on the UK leaky boat. But rest assured, there won't be many immigrants or aristocrats. They will be in various countries trying to recreate what is happening to the UK now. There are more good people in the world than bad. One day, goodness will overcome the bad. Those with fragile egos will be introduced to good home training and spend time learning the art of manners. The rest of us will be giving others a helping hand in the world, wherever and however we are able. People with a good heart and mind can sleep at night. That's all on this week's podcast. This one is about half an hour. The one next week is very, very long, so be warned. But hopefully you have found enough in what I've said for you to go searching through some of the, if not all, the reference sources listed at the end of the article, because there are some really interesting pieces of work there, both reports, research and articles in various business publications, which I think you will find interesting, and I am fairly certain that you will be able to identify people that you know within the media world, as well as in the royal family, and possibly within friendships and relatives as well. You will spot the signs. So hopefully that will be useful for you in the future. As usual, I shall speak to you all in the comments on Sunday evening and throughout the week. And then next week, there is a real humdinger of a topic which could have gone on for more than one podcast, and we may well revisit it in the new year. But for now, speak to you all in the comments. Speak to you soon. Bye from me. Bye from Ivy. Bye.